Welcome to the Thriving Marriage here at High Thrive Live. I'm here with Mark Johnston, our head marriage coach at High Thrive Coaching, and I'm Heather Choate, our mindset coach. And I'm going to add heart set coach and soul set coach, which you may have never heard those terms before. But mindset, we're understanding more and more, is only a small piece of the puzzle. And so getting our heart into the right place, our emotions and our soul going with that is really helping everyone move into the right direction. So today we are talking about what to do when you or your spouse are stuck in the past. And this topic came right from you guys, right from the group. So we're grateful to be of service to you and want to make this really valuable and helpful for everyone who might be experiencing something like this. So I'm first going to start off talking about if you're the one who might feel like stuck in the past. And then Mark's going to go into if your spouse is the one that might be stuck in the past a little bit more, because they're kind of two different things, but they have similarities and kind of some crossover. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. Mark, if you have anything you want to add.
No, it's a great topic. I'm glad we have it today. But yeah, feel free, go and jump right in.
Awesome. And I can see a couple of you are watching. So as always, let us know you're there. We like to make sure we're not just talking to our webcams. There's people on the other end of this. We always really appreciate interacting with you guys. So if you have a question or comment, go ahead and leave that. And if you're watching the replay, we check every single comment and question that comes in. So go ahead and feel free to reach out. So first of all, this idea of being stuck in the past. The very first thing that I want to do is bring a little bit of grace to the situation and clarify just a few things. I was just listening to one of my favorite mentors, Carrie MacArthur, and she was talking about how current research shows that there's kind of 3 different temperaments. And what's interesting in the podcast, it's her and her husband, and they both have the opposite temperament. So the 3 different temperaments is the one temperament is always looking to the future. It's always looking at what's coming up next. The majority of their thoughts are about what's coming up. And that could either be worry or it could be excitement and goal setting and, being really driven about that. Okay. Then the second kind of temperament is being really present in the now. Someone who's really rooted in the present moment, and most of their thoughts are on what's currently going on in their life. They're not thinking too much about the future or too much in the past, which leads us to the last temperament, which of course is looking in the past. Okay. And for some reason, there's this idea that, there is some truth to this too. So I'm kind of rambling here, but that looking in the past is always a negative thing. And what we found is that that's not actually true. So I just want to start off with a little bit of grace here and understanding that whatever temperament you might be in, that's okay. That's actually part of your personality. It's part of what makes you a unique, beautiful person. So sometimes when people are really reminiscing about the past or tend to have a lot of thoughts about the past, that can be viewed as a negative thing. So right away, I just want to dispel that myth that that's not necessarily the worst thing ever. Me, I'm a future thinker. Same with Dave, her wife, her husband. There you go. Whereas Carrie was more of like someone that looked at the past. And looking at the past and thinking more about the past can actually give you a deep well of wisdom and strength and understanding that I might miss a little bit because I'm always thinking about what's happening next, that I don't really think about so much about the past. And then of course there's that one that's rooted in the moment. And that's where a lot of like the Zen kind of comes in, like being present in the moment. And I think it's important to have kind of a balance of all 3. Oh, we lost Mark, but hopefully he comes back on. I just wanted to give, hey, Mike, nice to see you. Give a little bit of grace there that if you find that you're someone that's maybe a little more sentimental or thinks about the past, that's not always necessarily a bad thing. And neither are any of them. It just depends on how we choose to focus on it and what our dominant intent is. So I could be looking at the current moment and seeing everything going wrong. I could be looking at the past and seeing everything that went wrong. I could look at the future and see everything that could go wrong. And none of those are going to serve us. Okay. However, we can draw strength and clarity and power by choosing to see the good in both the past, the present, and the future. So that's kind of the mindset that I would like to put forth with great love and respect to you, is that we cultivate that kind of a mindset, heart set, and soul set, so that we can really move ourselves forward. Now, I have no idea where Mark went. If anyone can
I'm
see
here.
him, let me know where he went. I might be flying
me?
solo. I don't know if his connection went bad or something. I just see like this black screen of death over there. But that's totally fine. If we have to do this in 2 parts, we're totally cool with that. Okay, so one of the big problems that happens is when we get stuck in the past in a negative way, where we can't seem to move forward. We're constantly reminiscing about everything that went wrong, everyone who ever harmed us, and we carry the pain of the past into the present, and we project it even into the future. Okay, so let's see. Now it's just me. I don't know what's going on here, but we're in the present moment. We're enjoying it. We're going to celebrate what is. There he is. Hey, Mark.
Hey, I could hear you that entire time. I wasn't sure what was going on. It looked like other people could see me as well, so I just reconnected.
Oh, well, okay. I guess I'm just the crazy one over here today. No worries. Okay, so we want to talk about if you're really stuck with some past pain and how to kind of forgive and heal from that to move on. So I'm going to touch on just a couple of things real quick. So first of all, if you're human, we're going to be hurt. That is part of our human experience, right?
If you're human,
none of us make it from cradle to grave without someone hurting us. And so that is part of our human experience, and it's going to happen again. And unfortunately, we are probably going to hurt people as well. That's just kind of what happens when you get a bunch of us imperfect human beings. So another thing that's really important to understand is that whoever may have hurt you and whoever you may have hurt, understand that they are probably doing the very best that they can, given where they are in life and where they are in their journey. And each of us, we really see the world from a very different perspective. And so something that I might do might cause someone else to attack me, feeling that that behavior is something that they need to defend themselves against based on their perspective. Mark, wouldn't you agree with that, right? We all have these different kind of like stained glass windows that we see the world through, and understanding that they're probably doing the very best that they can allows some room for some grace there and some empathy. Let's see, I lost my train of thought here. So the first question I want to ask you, if you really feel like you're holding on to something, is why am I holding on to this? Okay, that's one of those deep mindset questions I really want you to sink your teeth into, because sometimes we carry these things around for years and years and years and years. They're running in the background of our life, or sometimes in the foreground, and we don't really stop to question, why am I holding on to this? And I would challenge you that there is a reason why it's still there. If there wasn't a reason, it wouldn't be there. Okay, there's some kind of purpose or some kind of lesson that it's wanting you to learn. So there's still something that you can learn from it, something that you can feel from it, and something that you can become because of it. And until you ask yourself that question, why am I still holding on to this? It's just going to continue to run in your background and continue to keep you stuck. So taking a minute, not just a minute, but really taking some time and sinking into that. Why am I still holding on to this? Am I trying to protect myself from future pain? Right? Have I not developed that kind of comfort or security or power within myself? Have I not developed that confidence in myself to move myself forward? Is that why I feel like I still need to use this as a shield? Right? So it's going to be different for every single person, but I really want you to sink into that. So why am I holding on to this? And hey, Lanisha, nice to see you. Mark, anything you want to add in here before I jump to our next little thought?
I do think that, a very common reason why people hold on to pain like that, and I mean, this, I can certainly touch on this a little bit later, but is that the fear of people hold on to pain, people continue to experience that pain when they expect there to be more pain in the future. So for instance, someone might continually refer back to these childhood traumas of feeling betrayed or getting taken advantage of or something like that, because they still fear getting taken advantage of. And that then shows up in their relationship, or they might hold on to this past hurt in their own marriage because they're still afraid that that hurt is going to continue on into the future. So like when we're looking at like the reasons why people are holding on to the pain, it's very much, it's not just about the past, it's very much about what we expect right now and what we expect to happen in the future.
Absolutely. So one of the first things, one of these first steps, I'm going to do kind of like a this versus that format to show what to do and then what not to do, what we want to avoid doing, would be feeling versus suppressing. Okay. So we're taught very early on not to feel things, even from childhood on. We are conditioned from our parents to just kind of suck it up or don't be such a crybaby. And what happens is that many of us, instead of feeling what we're supposed to feel, which might be anger, it might be pain, it might be resentment or guilt, we suppress those emotions. And what happens when we suppress them is that we try to distract ourselves. And we've all seen different ways of distracting, right? We're all very good at numbing ourselves in our culture or society through, alcohol, television, food, drugs, pornography, anything else along those lines, to distract ourselves from feeling those uncomfortable emotions. However, they never go away. What happens is that they become suppressed in our subconscious mind. Carl Jung calls that your vast unconscious mind. And what happens is when we suppress those emotions, psychologists say that we then get into a pattern called projection. So that then our subconscious takes all of that pain and projects it forward into everything that we see, which is exactly what Mark was just talking about. He was talking about how now we're in the present moment, and because of the pain from the past, we have that fear that's going to happen again. And it taints everything that we see. It kind of clouds that reality for us. So that reality, as Robin Sharma says, he says, you're not seeing the world as it is. You're seeing the world as you are through a very specific filter. And that kind of filter is not going to be serving you when you're stuck carrying on all of that pain. Now, going back to the 90s, I like this song, Alanis Morissette. She says, the quickest way out is in. So sometimes we just have to feel it. We have to allow ourselves to feel those awful emotions that we don't want to feel. And our society encourages us not to feel, right? Think about like some Native American cultures or some different, those different kind of cultures where like even like African cultures and stuff where they have lamentation and they have wailing and grief to express that, to let that emotion out. So here's a couple different ways to help you feel the emotion. And again, Mark, if you want to jump in, I know I'm just going.
Yeah, you're doing great.
Go ahead, jump in anytime. But to really feel what you're going through rather than suppressing it, there's a couple really powerful techniques. The first one would be through journaling. This is getting all the pain out of you and onto the page. There's science that shows that when we actually do physical journal writing, that releases neurotransmitters that help us process our emotions better. Bruce Lee was known to every day write down all of his worries, all of his fears, and he would just write them down on the page. And then he would take a match to it and burn it, and just releasing that energy. So allowing yourself a space, a safe space to actually feel these things, to process these things. I understand that can be scary. We all want to avoid pain, and we think that we are when we're suppressing it, but we're not. We're just putting it on a low level burner that's only going to create disease, discomfort, disharmony, and this idea of this projecting it into the future kind of thing. So journaling is one really important way. Talking it out. Again, we're kind of looked down at if we're really honest with our emotions. So finding a safe person, you'll find out who your true friends are, right? When you're in crisis mode, a safe person, even a therapist or loving parent, someone that you feel safe with, that you can really talk through these emotions. And that helps. You can literally like map it psychologically to help process through them. So journaling, talking it out, and then spending time in solitude. And I encourage in nature, getting some quiet, some space to safely feel like, okay, I can feel this now, right? And sometimes we have to be alone. We have to make sure we're in a safe place, that no one could judge us or make us want to crawl back inside ourselves, but that we can fully express that. There's a story of a Native American healer who would go out, and she went through some trauma, some abuse herself, and she would go out into the forest and she would shake the limbs of the trees and scream. Now, that's not a normally accepted behavior in our culture. However, the idea is that through that process of kind of like emoting these feelings, we get them out and are able to handle them much more effectively. So if that's making sense to you guys, let me know. I hope that makes sense. We all see that suppressing these creates a lot of damage in the long term. And so if you're kind of in that situation, or your spouse is, that's going to be one of those root issues that's going to create a lot of other symptoms that we see in relationships. So Mark, anything you wanted to add to that point?
Just trying to think anything I could. I mean, I can certainly go on to my subject, but I think you've covered it really well. I mean, essentially, you're right. A lot of the times, what's going on is this person is pulling things from the past. They're seeing things through this filter. They're projecting it out onto other people. And I do think a good way out is just to process it. This becomes a little bit more difficult when it's your partner that's dealing with the past than yourself. But yeah, there's certainly less control there, but things that you can still do. And yeah, like I said, I think you covered it really well. If you're done there, I can talk about how we can.
Almost. I have to
okay.
Make a couple more things.
Yes, actually, yeah, I'm seeing that now. Okay, yeah, I see your notes there.
So then the next one would be so we're doing feeling versus suppressing. The next thing would be understanding versus judging. Okay. The reality is we don't understand the motives of other people, and we'll never know what was going on for them. The person that cuts you off in traffic, maybe they had a sick kid in the back car, in the seat, that we're trying to rush to the emergency room. And we make these quick judgments, and we easily label people. Narcissist, that's a big one to me. That's a trigger word to me. But we put these labels on people, and we don't want to be labeled ourselves, but we do it so easily and so quickly to others. And really what that does is it just puts people in boxes. It puts walls up between us. However, the fastest way to bridge that gap is always through understanding. That's one of the biggest things that Mark and I teach in helping couples reconnect with each other, is to try to put yourself in their shoes. Try to understand what they've gone through, what kind of hidden pains they might have that you have no idea about. And when you are able to see things through their eyes, that almost always leads to better understanding, and you're able to then forgive, because you realize it's not so much about you, it's more about them and where they are at and the things that they've had to go through. So understanding versus judging. The next thing is communicating versus condoning. Again, we go into that easy, like, oh, that's so wrong, you should never treat someone like that. But what you need to do, rather than condoning, is communicating. And here is where we speak our truth. This takes some bravery. And there's techniques to this, where this is the tip of the iceberg. Mark and I can guide people further on how to do this exactly. But communicating that boundaries have been crossed. When you did that, that made me feel this. And we're not attacking, we're not blaming, and we're not putting the other person in a defensive position, is not our intent. But we do need to speak our truth. And that is how we own some of our power. So again, this goes back to not letting it suppressed, not trying to be, perfect to everyone else, or like this total peacemaker, but understand that we have a right to say when certain lines have been crossed, and to let someone know that has hurt them. There's a bumper sticker that says, "Speak your truth even when your voice shakes." So taking hold of some of that power is really going to help you process through things and help you release them, because when you told someone, this is how I feel, you're better able to let it go because you know you did something about it. You didn't just complain to your sister or your mom or your best friend. You didn't just let it eat you up inside for days or weeks or months or years, but you took some kind of action to say, this is what I need to do to keep me safe. And then you kind of let the rest go because you understand you can't control everyone. Okay, last one, I promise. hope this is helpful. I appreciate the thumbs up. You know, I'm kind of flying through it, but I think this is really important to learn how to process this kind of pain and release it. The last one is my favorite one: gratitude versus grudges. What we found is that, and science is now catching up to this, is that happiness is actually, it can be learned. Like, happiness is an exercise. It's a choice, right? It's something that we can choose to have at any point in our lives. And it's not just something that happens to us. It's something that we intentionally create. So I really love intentional gratitude, a practice of being intentionally grateful for things. And again, the science shows that when we express that gratitude, when we write out things that we're grateful for right now, or things that we're grateful for even from the past, because there's always something good to find in it, that again releases those neurotransmitters. It helps us feel better and helps us get to a clearer state so that we can make better choices going forward. So really, that's how I call turning your pain into power. When I was going through cancer treatment, that was the song that was out by The Script, and my kids loved that song. My son would scream that part out in the car every day, every hour: turn your pain into power. I'm getting teary just thinking about that, because that sustained me in some of those really difficult, dark nights of the soul. That this idea that our pain is actually power. And it is a gift that we can use. Imagine if we looked at that every time we had some kind of pain or someone hurt us. Oh yeah, you're adding to my power. It would just be a completely different shift. And when we can see the lessons in every single adversity, then that is where the growth comes. And that's how we're able to take the challenges and the painful situations from the past, the present, and those that are yet to come to really move us forward. So those are my tips on how to get yourself unstuck from past pain and how to forgive those that may have wronged you. So now we need to see the other side of the coin. Yeah. If you feel like you're in a really good place, but maybe your partner is someone that's really stuck in some of that past pain, how we can handle that and how we can move the relationship forward and support them even in that kind of situation. So over to you, Mark.
Yeah, those are some really great suggestions, Heather. And certainly when we are looking at our own situation, it's much easier to work on ourselves than to work on someone else. And so there's a lot more little things, little details that you can do, just because simply you have a lot more control over your own circumstances, how you yourself feel, than over, say, how someone else feels. But even still, if your partner is really stuck in a lot of pain and they're really pushing that out onto other people, there are things that you can do to support that situation, to make it better. Like I mentioned before, I do think there are certain reasons why people hold on to pain, especially if it's in the relationship, if it's them holding on to something that hurt them because of what you did. Usually when this is going on, it's because whatever pain it was not fully addressed. It was not, that the person doesn't feel like their pain was fully understood, and that going forward they expect there's still some amount of risk in their mind going forward, that they're still going to be hurt. So for instance, let's take an example of infidelity. Infidelity can really be damaging on a relationship, though many couples still do stay together even after infidelity happens. But what we see is that after infidelity, I do see a very common problem is the spouse who was hurt really has a hard time trusting. They're holding on to that pain. They will check up on the offending spouse, and they'll check their phones, and they'll be they won't trust the things that the offending spouse says, or they'll have doubt in, things like where they were or why they're communicating with certain people, because they're still holding on to that possibility that they could be hurt again. If we really look at this closely, what this shows is that this person does not feel a lot of control over the circumstances, and so they're trying to pull in some amount of control here. So taking that same example, they try to control the situation by checking in and mistrusting, and trying to put up those defenses and try to mitigate any potential hurt. Now the problem with this is that usually does not bring a couple closer together. We can look at this with many other examples too. For instance, in one couple it might be feeling neglected or unsupported, and so this person, they might for some time try to remind and nag to get that support, because they continue to feel like they're not going to be supported, and eventually this pushes the couple apart. We could look at it, and there's all sorts of examples here, from abuse to addiction to whatever, and we see the person is holding on to some semblance, some way of protecting themselves, because they still expect there to be pain in the future. So then the big question is, what do we do about this? How can you help this partner who's holding on to that potential pain, the idea that they're going to be hurt again? One way is to give them what they need here, and like I said, they're looking for control. So let's give them a healthy avenue for control and help you give that control to them. Taking that example of infidelity again, we're looking at different ways that they're holding on to control. They're checking in on you, and they're checking in on, they're not really believing everything you say. So what I usually suggest in these sort of situations is, one, making sure that the hurt partner feels well understood. Mm-hmm. As in, it's not enough to just know that they're hurting from, say, infidelity. We'll keep using that example. But understanding why it hurt, and what they're fearing currently, and what they're afraid of for the future, what they think might happen if things, if they get hurt again, and so on and so forth. It needs to be fully explored, this problem. If they do not feel fully understood, completely understood, they're going to still hold on to that pain. Once that you have more of that understanding established, it is going to be a lot about making sure that they have some measure of control in the situation. So they've been doing this unhealthily, but you can give them a healthy avenue to get control. A lot of times what this will mean is actually scheduling out or creating systems within the marriage to give some measure of control. So for instance, if infidelity is an issue, and there's really a lot of disconnection being created from all the checking in, maybe what you do is you schedule a time to just open everything up and just have it like compacted into that one moment. So you don't have to worry about it the rest of the week. Have that time set aside for discussing where you have been or what's been going on, and demonstrate that you are following through on, being honest and being faithful. It's the measures of control that you give them, the expectations that you set, and the following through on those expectations that will allow you to move past this pain. And that's mostly it. Obviously, case to case, there's going to be a lot of small details, things to include. But if we had to generalize this, That's mostly what needs to happen as far as dealing with your partner's pain.
Absolutely. Now, we did get one question. I just want to go maybe a little bit deeper in. So what if this is something that your spouse, what if this is a trauma that happened to them even prior to the relationship? So prior to the marriage, there was some kind of abuse or trauma, or perhaps, someone was cheated on from a previous relationship. And now that spouse is bringing that into the current relationship. So it might not have been something that this person did themselves to their partner, but they're going into the relationship like that.
Well, I still think many of the same ideas apply, and that the person is probably, the whole reason this question is probably brought up is because it's causing some sort of problem in the relationship. And so, what is this person trying to do? They're trying to control the situation enough so that they can protect themselves from further pain. And we see this all the time in cases of abuse or neglect. And when this person gets into a relationship, they are less trusting of their partner. And so they do different things to try and minimize any risk or minimize pain. But as you can set certain expectations and give them a sense of control, it's going to really help out. But even before that, like I said, you're not going to be able to give them a sense of control. You're not going to be able to even process this pain until they feel well understood by you. It may be that they need some professional help, but even in those circumstances, your spouse needs to feel well understood by the professional help before they can give them that measure of control. It all depends on where you want that support to come from. If you want to give that support, you need to give that understanding and control. If they're getting professional support, those elements still need to be in there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Mark. Hope that this was of value to you. This is a great start. And again, every relationship is so different. There's many different elements going on here, different types of personalities. And so if you're feeling like you need more guidance in this is just the tip of the iceberg, some things to get you started. We want you to take action on these and let us know how they help you. Let us know, the kind of breakthroughs that you experience. But when you're ready for some more, we have a free guide, 60-second plan to reconnect with your spouse, where we go really deep into how to deal with some of these issues. Specifically, if your spouse is checked out of the marriage, if they don't want to work on things, if they're not wanting to let go of some of the past things, this will help give you even more resources on what you can do to really move yourself forward. So I will put the link to that here in the video. Go ahead and grab that. And as always, if you want to get on a free call with Mark or I to talk about it further in depth about your specific challenges and how you can move yourself and your marriage forward, then always let us know. So we appreciate you. And we look forward to seeing your marriages thrive and that everyone can move forward in positive and healthy ways. So thank you so much, Mark, for being here today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. All right. We'll talk to you next time.
See ya.